Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Michael, live, doing a live stream. I will eventually set this up more. It's actually already been a little bit more set up, but I always say that, so I'm not putting any time horizon on it. I can promise you that. Although I am going to need to set it up more because, hey Ben, how you doing? Hey Dave, good to see you guys. Just letting people arrive. I'm gonna have to set it up more because I'm gonna start doing either one or two additional live streams a week. Usually, I think on either Thursday and Monday. But we're actually, thank you, Sam. Welcome aboard. But we're actually gonna basically make them much more consistent and part of the channel offering. It's probably gonna be 50-50. One of them will have to do with the book that I'm writing about for Zero Books, about how to defeat the new right and the IDW and what the cosmopolitan socialist politics is, what's a global materialist politics that is fundamentally anti-essentialist, anti-racist, but also does not fall into the toxicity that sometimes really can emerge in all online communities and definitely in the online left. Pam Anderson owned Meghan McCain today. That was beautiful. We'll definitely be playing that clip on the next TMBS. So what I'll say for this is I had a couple of thoughts I did want to share about the importance of voting on foreign policy, why that's actually really important. But I also want to say that definitely you should hit us with super chat donations. I want to set an ambitious goal. Let's clear $100 during this conversation. At the very least, I'm going to start actually aiming for us to get up to about 250 for each YouTube live stream. And if you hit me with a super chat donation, thank you, brother. At 5 or above, I will answer your question. Although Congressional Baseball Fan is also a patron, so you can ask any questions you want. Hey, Michael, I've been looking for resources. Okay, this is a really good question about the Clinton era in the Balkans. This is something that I don't know nearly enough about, to be honest with you. One thing that's really clear to me is, there's going to be a critique of Clinton NATO policy in the Balkans, which is self-evident in terms of civilian casualties, in terms of looking for a purpose to keep NATO going in a post-Cold War environment, the geopolitical consequences of that aggressive expansionism, 100%. At the same time, I don't want to do a counter narrative where, as an example, the reality of what the Milosevic Serbian government was up to is minimized. So it's a really complicated region. The first step I'm taking is Lily Lynch is going to do an illicit history for TMBS patrons in the next couple of weeks on the Tito, the Annan-aligned movement, and the liberation of Africa. What was Yugoslavia's role in anti-colonial struggles in Africa? So thank you for that question. I'll be following up. Again, all super chat donations, go for it. If you hit with a 5 or above super chat, I will answer your question. Guys, you need to vote on foreign policy. And I find it, I have to say, pretty extraordinary that there's a lot of people who sort of brand themselves as being very woke and very conscious, and they think that they can just completely glide over that dimension when they talk about voting. And they talk about how to assess a presidential election or a congressional candidate for that matter. And I just want to say, first of all, as a U.S. citizen, that is a literal privilege that you have to consider. You have to consider that foreign policy, which actually, because of how the bureaucracy has been developed and because of how foreign policy has been so concentrated in the executive branch, there is a huge disproportionate power that presidents have over foreign policy. And if you look at my friend Daniel Bessner, his work, and he's a regular on TMBS, as well as being a historian at the University of Washington, he's really working on how do we actually dismantle the national security state bureaucracy. That's essential. And at the same time, any president that occupies office is going to immediately have power over drones, over all sorts of discretionary areas of U.S. foreign policy. Now, of course, there is a whole military-industrial apparatus. There's an intelligence-industrial apparatus. There's the just raw self-interest of the arms industry and all of the other people that are, example, pushing ongoing U.S. support for the Saudi genocide in Yemen. Actually, our genocide as well. We're absolutely part of perpetuating that genocide in Yemen. But that being said, you immediately, I don't know if you can see that, you can see there's Muhammad Ali and a Dipset record in the background. The president has an enormous amount of power out of the gate on foreign policy and will go up against the bureaucracy if the president chooses to challenge the really warmongering establishment. We can say that for sure. Number two, the reality is that your vote affects every single person on earth in this regard, and that's why it really matters whether or not a presidential candidate is talking about cutting military spending, reining in U.S. empire, or trying to make U.S. empire woke or green. Number three, blowback is a real thing. So if you look at any number of serious issues that we face in the United States, so I want to be really clear here. 100% we should be welcoming and housing millions of refugees, frankly, from Syria, from Latin America, and so on, without a question. And the Trump administration and the entire modern infrastructure of immigration policy is racist and barbarous, disgusting, and we need to absolutely abolish ICE, and we need to conform with international law on refugees. And it's also the reality that if the United States under the Obama administration did not support a coup in Honduras that removed a progressive president, that if we didn't fuel a drug war across Central and Latin America, that if we didn't have huge military bases in Central America, look at that, that we would not be feeding the types of domestic crises and narco states which the United States supports, which lead to the incredible instability and crisis of mass migration. The same dynamic played out in Europe. Interventions in Libya, in Syria, these synchronize with the rise of xenophobic and far-right politics across the globe, and many smart foreign policy analysts have pointed this out. The September 11th attacks go back to the U.S.-Saudi partnership and Pakistani partnership in the Soviet Union. The U.S. military as a carbon emitter, when we talk about the climate change dimension, these things affect and interact with our lives every day. Lula is a political prisoner. Why have we been talking about it so much? Well, he needs to be free, and of course, but also let's look at the reality of the politics that led to the burning and the crisis in the Amazon. You cannot in any way default as, foreign policy takes a back seat, or it's okay if a candidate doesn't come through on foreign policy. Now, there's a lot of structural barriers, and any president and any administration, just as pushing for single-payer healthcare, universal student debt relief, anything ambitious and worth doing is going to go up against every incumbent special interest. And of course, when you go up against the military-industrial complex, you go up against the intelligence agencies, you go up against the whole private national security state and how that overlaps with Silicon Valley, the complete collapse and invasion of privacy in this country. You're going up against very, 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 powerful interests. And that also needs to be at the center of how we do political analysis, how we think about campaigns, how we think about movements in this country. So I've just been noticing, because, again, I 100% support Sanders across the board. If you have any type of serious progressive agenda, he's the best candidate, simply undebatable in terms of his theory of change and in terms of also the broadness of his plans, especially when it comes to universal health care, renewing labor, redistributing power and resources in this country, okay? But also, there is a huge question on how we conduct foreign policy in an era where the power dynamic between the United States and China is changing and will continue to change. In an era where we have a reset arms race and we need to put arms control back at the center of the agenda. In an era where the imbalances in global population and the carbon crisis generated by first world capitalism and exploitation of the third world is leading to a whole other set of ecological disasters and environmental refugees. Bernie Sanders' Green New Deal has a massive fund put to help developing countries transition, as well as proposing a global partnership with China and Russia. That is the type of thinking we need. Not a green military and not a candidate like Elizabeth Warren who's voted for every single military budget increase. So these things are profoundly important. They're actually at the center of all of the things that we care about. And they're inseparable from, thank you very much, and they're inseparable from the domestic vision, from this broader sense of democratization, redistribution, and giving people actual power, actual opportunity, actual community. We can do it, and it's inseparable from taking on the military-industrial complex, from voting on foreign policy, and having a genuine progressive vision on foreign policy. Bernie's absolutely not perfect on foreign policy. I would certainly, as an example, I 100% of course support BDS with regard to the Israeli occupation and incursion in West Bank and Gaza. But if we look broadly, the reality is that Bernie is a leader on stopping the genocide in Yemen. He is clear, the only person who's voted steadily to save the Iran deal, the only person who's seriously talking about cutting defense spending. And yes, there are some areas where Tulsi Gabbard has definitely made some of the right noises. I've outlined the problems with her in other videos, but she's made the right noises with things like, and I should correct myself, I said at one point that she didn't mention the military-industrial complex. She does, so credit to her. And she was absolutely right about the intervention, regime change efforts by the Trump regime aimed at Venezuela. However, the key difference is that when Bernie talks about things like freeing Lula, when he talks about U.S. interference in Central America, which goes back to his solidarity with Nicaragua in the 80s, which should be exactly why, another reason that we all should be voting for and actively supporting Bernie Sanders, he is building beginning of a foundation of global solidarity. And just like as in domestic politics, where he has moved to the left and gotten better and better and better and more innovative, the same dynamic applies in foreign policy. So we need to center it. We need to be clear about why Bernie is a good candidate on that, why in fact Warren is a not good candidate on that, Joe Biden is a disgusting, disastrous candidate on that, and all the other politicians, with the exception of Gabbard, who is very mixed on this, offer some version of more of an absolutely unacceptable status quo, and actually particularly Booker and Harris, extremely disturbing on Israel-Palestine. So we need to just start introducing this conversation. That's why I cover global stuff in a synchronized way. It's all the same dynamic. You can't abolish ICE, demilitarize the border, without also fundamentally challenging U.S. imperial and hegemonic policies in Latin America and the Caribbean. You can't talk about privacy and saving journalism and from corporate monopolies and from government silencing efforts without, of course, being totally clear about the incredible, dangerous case brought against Julian Assange, whatever else you think about him. And of course, we also need to be talking about freeing Chelsea Manning as well. Yes, Carno Varde, that went through. So now does anybody else want to hit a super chat donation, ask any questions? Guys, I'm thinking, as I say, usually Thursday and probably also Monday for 1 or 2 extra live streams a week. If they go well, we'll keep doing it. People who hit me with a 5 or above super chat donation, I'll answer your questions. As always, the whole way this thing happens is you go to patreon.com/TMBS, where we are well on our way to our first 3,000 patrons. 3,000 patrons. So I'm incredibly excited, guys. I really appreciate all of it. We've been growing fast. Thank you. What will Sean, the next video illicit history segment that Vic is working on, we're going to be releasing one next week on Jeremy Corbyn and New Labor. And then the next one is going to be on Jamaica, Michael Manley, and the CIA. Those always go out to Comrade and Above patrons first, and then we unlock it for everybody on... no, it was working. It went through Carnivarte. And then we unlock it for everybody on YouTube. Yes, there will be more Adidas outfits. I'm incredibly excited at how well we've done and are doing in terms of just growing the show and really building actually a bit of a global community. There's a lot of people listening in Europe, Latin America, Africa. It's incredibly exciting. So folks, anything else? Anybody have any other questions or anything else? How does Monday, Thursday sound in general? Because not usually going to be Friday. But at any rate, center foreign policy, it matters. The book is coming out in February. It matters. Hey, what's up? Greetings back to Cape Town. It matters profoundly. And I appreciate all of you. And peace and love. Lula Livre. If you haven't yet, click subscribe right now and go become a patron. Patreon.com/TMBS. Patreon.com/TMBS. I appreciate all of you and keep spreading the word. We're growing great. Things are really moving. I'm excited about this. Thanks, everybody.